All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for attending our workshop. My name is Heidi Besslinger, and I'm a principal regional planner at SCAG. I oversee the STBG and CMAQ program. Today, we have various SCAG staff that are attending. In the room with me is Warren Whitaker, Denise Sifford, Anna Eichelberger, and Jessica Karn. And we also have Pablo Gutierrez and Shay Northfield online. So just a few administrative reminders before we get started. We will be recording this presentation, and we plan to make the slides and the recording available on the program webpage after the event. To make the best use of our time, we will primarily take questions at the end, so feel free to drop them in the chat throughout the workshop. We will not be responding to project-specific eligibility questions, primarily because so many of these conversations can be nuanced, but any of those questions can be directed to SCAG staff, County Transportation Commission staff, or Caltrans local assistance staff via email, or as part of our office hours opportunities. The program guidelines cover much of the information that we are sharing in these workshops. These are available on our program webpage, which we will link in the chat. And also a quick reminder to please make sure you're on mute throughout the workshop. And I will turn it over to Warren for some introductory remarks.
I'd like to make a couple of background notes before we kind of get into the meat of the material for today. So as you probably surmise by the fact that we're holding this workshop, SCAG is responsible for the selection of projects to be funded with both Surface Transportation Block Grant, or STBG, program, and Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement, or CMAQ, program funds. Prior to SCAG taking on this role as directed by the federal government, it was done by the county transportation commissions for the better part of the last 3 decades. Given that legacy, the guidelines and workshop were developed in coordination with the county transportation commissions. Under the new SCAG process, you can expect that we will be doing a call for project solicitation every other year. Because this is an ongoing opportunity, we encourage you to be strategic in what you apply for and take full advantage of workshops, county-specific workshops, as well as the office hours that Heidi just mentioned as you prepare your programs. Additionally, you can shoot us emails, and contact information will be available towards the end of this deck. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Denise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great. So to get started, we just want to get an idea of who's joining us today. So I'll ask our AV team to put the first poll question up at this time. And that is, have you or your agency utilized CMAQ STBG funds in the past? So we'll give that a couple seconds. Great. So looks like about half of our participants today, a little over half. And, this is important because we do realize that the audience for these workshops is varied in level of experience and involvement in some of these programs, and specifically federal aid funding opportunities. So we will go through some background to start and general information on federal aid project management. Then we'll go through eligibility considerations, funding availability, the schedule, and we'll also spend some time discussing the criteria that will be used as part of the project evaluations. For this call for projects, we're also going to be using an online application portal for submittal. So there is going to be a short demonstration of the platform that we'll be using. And lastly, we'll also give some updates on upcoming office hours opportunities and technical assistance from county transportation commissions, and make some time for some Q&A as well. So this is some quick background, especially directed to those participating today that haven't yet had the opportunity to work closely with SCAG before. SCAG, or the Southern California Association of Governments, is the metropolitan planning organization for the 6-county region that includes Ventura, Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Orange, Riverside, and Imperial counties. Some of SCAG's primary responsibilities include the development and preparation of the Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy, also known as Connect SoCal, the development of the Federal Transportation Improvement Program, or FTIP, and as of July 1, 2023, the project selection for the Surface Transportation Block Grant, or STBG program, and the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program, or CMAQ, which is the subject of our workshop today. This slide provides an overview of the overall federal funding process, and really it's just overarching to get an idea of what's all involved. The STBG and CMAQ programs are federal transportation fund sources that come through the Federal Highway Administration. Available funds are distributed to the SCAG region through this call for projects process. SCAG's first call for projects was completed last year in June 2024, and this workshop will focus on the upcoming call, where our objective really is to provide potential applicants with information to guide decision-making about whether or not this is the right funding opportunity for the projects that have a need right now. SCAG also anticipates conducting a call for STBG and CMAQ funds every odd year. So this is just another in a series of more to come, 2025, and then 2027. Once the projects are selected and awarded funding, they must be programmed in the FTIP. And as mentioned already, this process is already administered by SCAG in coordination with county transportation commissions and the implementing agencies. The FTIP approval process can take anywhere from a few weeks up to a few months. Following that FTIP approval, implementing agencies will need to work directly with their Caltrans local assistance district to go through the obligation process. And some of you may be familiar with the process. The length of it really depends on the phase of work for the funds that are being requested, but at minimum, typically this would take 3 or more months. Once the funds have been obligated, then the implementing agency can begin work and incur eligible expenses, and those are then invoiced to Caltrans local assistance for reimbursement. So as you can tell, the federal funding process takes a significant amount of time and requires many complex steps. So this is what we're asking potential applicants to consider when deciding whether or not to apply for federal aid funding. And we have the second poll question now, and that will be which agency manages obligations and reimbursement requests? Great. Okay. Yeah. So SCAG does not directly participate in obligation or reimbursement processes for this program. All forms and submittals will go through Caltrans local assistance and are subject to Caltrans and federal aid requirements. Okay, so before going into specifics on the call for projects, these are 3 questions that really serve to guide potential applicants in determining if they will decide to follow through and complete an application for funding. First of all, if the agency or organization is an eligible applicant, if the project activities are eligible. Of course, we can't make an exhaustive list of everything that's eligible and not eligible. So through the workshop, we will be sharing a high-level version of project eligibilities and activities. And we've also included several references in some of the later slides. And then the last question there, does your agency have the technical capacity to meet program requirements? So that is particularly managing and delivering a federal aid project. In general, eligible applicants include cities and counties in the SCAG region, transit agencies, federally recognized tribal governments, and county transportation commissions. While federal aid master agreements are not required to apply, the funds cannot be accessed or programmed without an executed master agreement with Caltrans. This process in itself may take a few months at minimum. If the applicant has received federal transportation funds before, that is a great indicator that they may already have a federal aid master agreement in place. And specific to transit projects that are intending to transfer either STBG or CMAQ funding to the Federal Transit Administration or FTA, this requirement may not apply. However, we will be asking those applicants to coordinate with their respective county transportation commissions on roles and responsibilities related to direct recipient and subrecipient responsibilities and procedures for FTA transfers. So we've also included a couple of links on this slide related to resources on master agreements. Generally, STBG funding is considered to be one of the most flexible in terms of eligible activities. It supports preservation and improvements to the conditions of highways, bridges, public roads, pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, and transit capital projects. Particular to STBG funds, the projects must be located on a roadway that meet a minimum functional classification. So more specifically, projects that are located on a local road or rural minor collector would generally not be eligible through STBG funds. And we have included here also a link to another resource. This is the Caltrans functional classification website that includes a GIS data viewer. And this will allow applicants to check the functional classification of roadways that might be included in their potential project scope. The CMAQ program was established to fund transportation projects and programs that contribute to the reduction of criteria air pollutants. This program requires that an emissions benefits calculation is submitted alongside the application. And we do have a couple of some more information in later slides about the tools that are available to help meet this requirement. And on here, we have included some examples of activities or project types that we've seen that are commonly ineligible under the CMAQ program. So some of those include routine maintenance projects, landscaping, recreational trails that don't serve a transportation purpose, and ADA retrofits. As we mentioned earlier, these are federal funds being made available through this program. So we really at this point want to provide some reminders about what it takes, what's all involved in the technical capacity to manage federally funded projects. So we've compiled a pretty comprehensive list of some of the key federal requirements for consideration. You'll see generally all of the administration for authorizations to start work, process invoices, goes through Caltrans local assistance, and again has to follow all of the procedures that are outlined in the local assistance procedures manual. So if you are not already familiar with this document, it's a great place to start, as it does have information that takes you through requirements for each phase of work. Some of the other things that we've included on here: federal projects must comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, for environmental assessments. Some of those, in some cases, may require additional technical studies or securing permits from federal resource agencies. Federal labor regulations will also apply to these projects, so that would be related to minimum wage requirements and DBE participation. Risk assessment and management plans must also be in place to mitigate potential issues, and strict quality control and assurance measures are also required. Federal funds in some cases may also have additional design standards, and there is a separate process for federally compliant right-of-way acquisition. And there's also federal requirements in place for consultant selection. So this is kind of one of the more common mistakes that we see in not meeting those federal procurement requirements is advertising or awarding a contract too soon before work has been authorized. Federal funding is also not guaranteed to cover cost increases, so we really wanted to highlight that cost estimates related to these project applications should be up to date and escalated to year of expenditure, and if appropriate, also a reasonable contingency amount included. These federal funds also have a minimum local match requirement, so we'll cover that a little bit more later on. And we also have a resource page at the end of the presentation that links more information on these areas and a link to that LAPM document that I mentioned earlier. We do realize that this is probably a bit of a review for some of the more experienced project managers, but we really want to give new project sponsors an idea of what all is involved in accepting federal aid dollars. So, that said, we've gone through some of the details on eligibility and technical capacity for project delivery, and we'll now be moving into program specifics for this call, and I will pass it on to Jessica for the next section.
Hi, my name is Jessica Karn, and I'm an intern here at SCAG. And I'm going to be discussing non-SCAG selected projects in the 2025 FTIP. As mentioned previously, as of July 2023, SCAG has assumed the responsibility for the STBG and CMAQ project selection, which was the result of a federal corrective action. In order to comply with this federal corrective action, any project that is programmed with STBG or CMAQ funding after December 2026 will need to be SCAG selected. SCAG selection is defined as either awarded or on the contingency list in our prior call for projects in June 2024, or is defined as awarded or on the contingency list in this upcoming call process. Projects that have not obligated their STBG or CMAQ funding and do not meet the SCAG selected criteria will not be allowed to have STBG or CMAQ funds programmed in the 2027 FTIP. If a project has not obligated its funds and has not been SCAG selected by this deadline, its funding will be considered lapse, meaning the unclaimed funds will become available for reprogramming to other SCAG selected projects. However, projects that were programmed in earlier federal fiscal years and no longer require new obligations will be grandfathered into the system. These projects will not need to go through the selection process again unless additional funding is needed. SCAG encourages projects on the contingency list from the last call to reapply in this call in order to strengthen their application and secure funding. If you have any questions regarding the status of your project, please reach out to the SCAG staff. Funding. This call for projects will make a combined $1.2 billion in STBG and CMAQ funding available. The years for funding availability are federal fiscal year 2026 to 2027 and federal fiscal year 2027 to 2028. As shared earlier, there is a minimum match requirement of 11.47%. The match requirement is dependent on project type and certain project types such as tolling projects, for example, toll lanes, which require a higher match percentage of 20%. This match requirement can be met with either cash match, for example, other non-federal funding, or toll credits. Toll credits are managed at the state level and are subject to availability. If requesting toll credits, project sponsors should be prepared to provide a cash match in the event that toll credits are not available or approved by Caltrans. SCAG does not have the ability to provide matching funds or replace funds. And to reiterate, this program is distributed through reimbursement, meaning that awarded agencies must have sufficient cash flow to front the project costs and have the technical and administrative capacity to prepare invoices for eligible costs that can be processed for reimbursement. So we're going to take a quick look at the schedule. This schedule is also available on the program webpage. The program guidelines were approved by the SCAG Regional Council on March 6th. They are also available on the program webpage now, so you can take a look at them. And this is the first general workshop. We will have a second one, which will cover the same information on March 18th. The application portal will go live on March 31st with an application due date on May 16th at 5 p.m. We will share more about office hours in a later slide. Those will also be primarily available in April. The CTC prioritization deadline of August 1st is only applicable to county transportation commissions. Following that will be the application evaluation period, and SCAG anticipates presenting award recommendations to the SCAG Regional Council by the end of calendar year 2025. For awarded projects, coordination on the FTIP programming will follow awards. So now we're going to do a quick poll question about when are the applications due. Great job, everyone. So yes, you would be correct. The applications are due to us by May 16th at 5 p.m.
All right, so here's the program scoring rubric. We'll go more into detail about each of these scoring criteria that's outlined in the table. But the air quality improvements and cost effectiveness criteria will only be evaluated for CMAQ eligible applications. So CMAQ eligible projects can score up to 110 total points, and STBG projects can score up to 100 total points based on the scoring rubric. So the first scoring criteria is the CTC, or County Transportation Commission prioritization criteria, and that is based on a ranking that each County Transportation Commission assigns to project applications within their county. The County Transportation Commissions are required to develop a framework for how these projects are prioritized within their county. Each application will then receive a ranking of either highly recommended, recommended, contingency list, or not recommended. These rankings will then be translated to a score of up to 50 points of the possible 100 or 110 points that is part of SCAG's evaluation process. Since each framework for prioritizing projects will vary from county to county, we won't be going into detail on each of the county's priorities. However, the commissions must minimally incorporate eligibility, county priorities, community and stakeholder development, and deliverability and readiness within their evaluation. Each prioritization framework will be made available on the Commission's website, and some of the county transportation commissions will require supplemental questions to be answered within your applications. For questions or additional information regarding the County Transportation Commission prioritization framework and supplemental questions, please contact the appropriate commission staff member. We have them all listed on the SCAG program webpage for your reference. The second evaluation criteria is called regional priorities, and this is based off of SCAG's regional priorities as outlined in our Connect SoCal 2024, as well as our SCAG presidential goals and objectives. So each Tier 1 priority category is outlined on this slide. The project types that fall within these Tier 1 categories will receive the maximum 20 points available for this scoring criteria. Appendix B of the guidelines offers examples of project types that may fall under each of these categories. We realize that there may be some nuances where project components are combined or may fall under more than one category. We recommend selecting the project that aligns most with your primary project type. If you're not sure where your project fits, please reach out to SCAG staff and we can provide clarification. The Tier 2 regional priority categories are listed on this slide, and these categories will receive 10 out of the possible 20 points for this scoring criteria. Additionally, Tier 2 projects may receive an additional 5 points, so up to 15 points out of the total 20 possible, if the applicant can demonstrate a systems approach to identifying and managing needs. Examples of this include a transportation-related natural lands preservation plan, a county or city pavement management plan or program, and or a county or city complete streets plan or program. And we did just want to make a note that the complete streets category for this call includes ATP type projects. So within this call, there is a greater focus on federal performance management areas, which comprise up to 20 points of the total scoring rubric. In our previous call for projects, this section was referred to as performance measures. So in short, federal performance management areas are a federally established set of national transportation performance measures that correspond to federal transportation planning goals. Typically, these goals are set at state and regional levels where they are incorporated within each regional transportation plan. The application questions are used to assess progress being made relative to each of the areas and associated measures. Application questions for this scoring criteria are structured to collect information about the potential impact that individual projects could have on these federal performance management areas. All of those are listed on the slide for your reference. Applicants may select which of the federal performance management areas their project best aligns with, and will have an opportunity to provide both general responses as well as quantitative data that supports the project's ability to improve these areas. So that being said, applications will be considered more competitive if they are able to demonstrate a data-based improvement rather than a general response. In the same way, projects that demonstrate a significant improvement to at least one of these areas will be considered more competitive. More information is available in Appendix C of our program guidelines, as well as our technical report that's linked below. The Community Economic Development Benefits Evaluation criteria provides up to 10 possible points of the application's total score. In our previous call for projects, this was the equity section. Applicants will review a list of 10 strategies that have been determined to provide community economic development benefits and identify which of these are incorporated into the scope of the proposed project. These strategies are identified in Appendix D of the program guidelines. Some of these strategies are specifically targeted to the geographic areas referred to as areas of persistent poverty and historically disadvantaged communities. The Build Grant Project Location Verification Mapping tool is provided as reference both on this slide and will be provided in the application to identify these geographic areas. Applicants will need to provide a supplemental narrative demonstrating how their project employs or incorporates the strategies that have been selected. Projects that capture 4 or more of the identified 10 possible strategies will receive the full 10 points for this scoring criteria. Projects that include 1 to 3 of the strategies will receive 5 out of the possible 10 points. So as mentioned, CMAQ eligible projects have the ability to capture an additional 10 points in this air quality improvements and cost effectiveness scoring criteria. So of those 10 additional points, 8 of them will be awarded by demonstrating cost effectiveness relative to similar project types. Since the cost effectiveness calculation uses a total of annual emissions reductions, we are also requesting documentation of the emissions data. This data will not be scored directly, but will be used as context on the cost effectiveness responses that are provided for this scoring criteria. The FHWA CMAQ toolkit will be the required methodology, and there are 18 tools available based off of project type. So we will only select a different we will only accept a different methodology if the proposed project type is not captured by one of these available 18 tools. Additionally, federal guidance requires that particulate matter 2.5 reducing projects be prioritized for CMAQ funding. Therefore, an additional 2 points will be awarded to the top 50% of PM 2.5 reducing projects. Overall, the air quality improvement benefits and cost effectiveness responses are optional, but it does present an opportunity to receive additional points. If you're struggling with whether or not to complete this section or how to complete it, please reach out to your respective County Transportation Commission staff, as some may have resources or technical assistance available, or you may contact SCAG for additional questions. Please note, however, that if your project does get selected for CMAQ funding, you must complete this air quality analysis in order to program your funds in the FTIP. This is a federal requirement. So now we are going to launch another poll question. This one is true or false. If the FHWA emissions calculator tool does not work for your project, other methodologies will be accepted. And that is true or false. All right, looks like most of you got this correct. It is true. If the FHWA emissions calculator tool does not work for your project or your project type is not listed of one of the 18 tools available, we will accept a different methodology as long as you provide proper documentation of your selected methodology. So shown on this slide is the FHWA cost effectiveness calculation, which will be required to respond to this scoring criteria. So as you can see, there are 3 major components in this calculation: total project cost, so cost of all phases of your project; the annual air quality improvements, and that is the data that will be derived from your air quality benefits analysis using that FHWA CMAQ toolkit; and the project lifetime in years, and that's your expected project lifetime. And those 3 components will give you the overall cost effectiveness. All right, so we have a quick break before we go into our application demo. You can take this time to stretch, or you can send in a couple of questions and we will be responding as we just get ourselves set up for the application demo. So we'll come back in just a couple of minutes, but please enter any questions in the chat.
Hi everyone, my name is Shay Northfield with SCAG. We're going to come back together from the break and I'm going to be walking us through our demo of the application. So thank you all so much for putting your questions in the chat. Please go ahead and keep putting your questions in the chat while we do our demo. So this is the website that you will see once I click share. When you get to the link of the application. So this is where you will log in or sign up. So the first time you do it, you will click sign up here and you'll enter some general information and create a password. And then you'll add your organization. And then once you have an organization for requested plans, this will be your county. It will auto-populate here. And then for requested access level, you will do sponsor, unless you are a county transportation commission. And then this will auto-populate. You will want to choose my organization's projects. Once you have completed this, you will create your account. And additionally, one note, to ensure appropriate access, we will require that eligible agencies that require access to projects for consultants to please provide written notice, which can be done via email to ftip@scag.ca.gov. So the application is not yet live, so I'm going to be going back to our test site. So I'm going to click log in. Going to attempt to log in, one moment. This did not happen during my practice round, so I'm going to see which login I need to do.
Shay, you can try the SCAG email instead.
Okay. Can you type in the username for that one? Having difficulty on that one as well. I do believe we have Mark from ECO on the call. So Mark, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, do you want to try just with the link I just sent you?
Is it in the chat?
I sent it directly to you it should be in the chat still, but I sent it as a direct message within Zoom.
All right, one moment. Thank you all for your patience. All right, I am live, so I just got to reshare my screen. Great. Okay, thank you all for your help on that. We are now in live, so I will go ahead and walk us through the application. So up at the right-hand corner, I'm going to click New Project. And for plan cycle, you are going to enter your corresponding county. So for the part of this test, I'm going to use SCAG. And then the plan revision section is going to auto-populate. Next is some more information about creating a new project. So the ID, this can be left blank and it's going to be auto-populated. This is different from other IDs, which we will talk about later on. For the purposes of this, I'm going to say test, but this would just be a descriptive title of your project. And then you're going to enter your project type from a drop-down list. So one reference for project type is that this refers to the 8 primary program categories that is identified in the STBG CMAQ program guidelines in the eligible project section. Additionally, Appendix B includes examples of projects that may fall into each of these categories, and you can also refer to federal guidance on eligible activities, which is linked in the guidelines. So you're going to click your agency, and this is going to auto-populate depending on which county you selected on the previous screen. If your agency is not showing up, you can click New Lead Agency. And then you're going to fill in county, County Transportation Commission, and a brief description. So that's going to create our test project for our demo. Once we get through here, we're going to get the project information that was auto-populated from what we just entered. And then if you selected lead agency as new, you can enter it in new organization name here, and you can leave the municipality blank. Next is just some general contact information for your agency. This would be your primary point of contact and secondary contact for the project leads for this project. You'll list any phases of work that you're requesting for, total funding request, and then if your agency has a Caltrans Master Agreement number, you can enter it here. If not, you can enter NA. This is a required field, so if you don't have one, you can just enter NA. For scope and location, this is a short answer question. Please be concise, but this is your opportunity to describe the existing conditions, purpose, and need of the project and a scope of work. Next are some more questions about your location, including your districts and air basins. So these are drop-down options. The district is going to auto-populate depending on your county. So for example, if I change my county to Los Angeles County and try it again, you'll see all of the districts for your corresponding county. If you do not see your district showing up on this drop-down list, please email us at ftip@scag.ca.gov. Next is for location information. You can click Add a New Location. And this is to indicate the system and functional classification of the roadway. So this is not applicable for transit projects for this application. And you can refer to the California Road System dataset, which is linked in the application guidebook when going through this to determine the road classifications. If you need to enter more than one roadway, you can do so here. So let's say your first one, you want local highway and it's going to be a major collector, but you have another roadway in the same project scope, you can add multiple. So you can add as many as applicable, just click new, add new location each time. So next is the program information. This is your opportunity to provide a complete funding information for all phases of the project, including prior phases in this table, this funding table. To add funding to the table, you can click Add Row. Funds identified should be committed. Committed funds for the purpose of this application are funds that have been approved to be programmed to the identified project by the agency administering the funding. Funds that have been requested through other discretionary programs where the project has not been identified to receive an award are not considered committed funds. For uncommitted funds, please use the remaining funding needed funding source in the tabs. So when you are going through, you'll add your fiscal year, the fund type, which you have all these drop-down menu options, and then additional information like ACCP, and then the different phases of the project, you can add the funding for each phase. And you can add as many rows as necessary through the Add Row feature. For existing federal aid projects, and especially projects that have previously received STBG or CMAQ funds, please be sure to distinguish between previously approved funding and this new funding request. So if you see here through the drop-down menus, there are different options for currently programmed and new requests that you can select for each funding row. And for currently programmed, this would be in an approved 2025 FTIP amendment. The funding table also has a match calculator to input requested amounts and determine the match here. So you can use that to determine matches. All federal funds for STBG and CMAQ must include a minimum of an 11.47% match in non-federal funds. So once you've added all of your rows, there is an opportunity for additional information. So first, there is a narrative text box to share any additional information about your funding plan. If the project has an existing PPR or project programming request form or FTIP sheet, you can provide that as an attachment in the attachments tab, which we'll talk about later. There's also a drop-down box to ask about toll credits. As referenced earlier in the presentation, due to limited availability of toll credits, project applicants should be prepared to provide a local match source in the event toll credits are not available for STBG and CMAQ funds. Tolling projects require 20% local match, and toll credits are managed by Caltrans at the state level. Next is a drop-down question for ineligible costs. So please indicate below if there are known STBG or CMAQ ineligible costs included in the scope of work for the proposed project. There are resources in the application guidebook that go into more detail about eligibility and project types and which types of projects are typically eligible or ineligible. And it's just going to ask for you to expand on any additional information about that. That would be helpful context. And then there's one more text box for this section to address the sponsor's ability to address any cost increases outside of this program. Next is the project schedule. This is a draft, an opportunity for you to put estimates for the timing of each phase of your project. For plans, you only need to fill out the planning date section of the calendars, which are here. Next is the environment documents. So for these, please provide the information for the anticipated or actual environmental document type required for the project. You should only fill out one of these rows, so either the NEPA row or the joint CEQA NEPA row. Next are some short answer questions about project readiness and deliverability to provide more context in your application about your project. Next is the air quality improvements. This is CMAQ eligible projects only. For this, you will click to add row to add your air quality data. Please provide all data in kg per day, and air quality improvements may be divided by project component at applicant's discretion. Please contact your respective County Transportation Commission for support in completing this section if needed. And the last section on this programming tab is change reason details. So please select the applicable response. For new project, that would be projects that have not received STBG or CMAQ funds before. For project changed, this could be any existing project that has STBG or CMAQ funds. This could include projects from the prior call or projects that have not been SCAG selected. So if you select projects changed, there is additional questions for you to answer of what is the context of the change in project. So you'll select any applicable options here, and then there's just opportunity for you to add additional information. For the narrative selection of this question, if you select a new project, please enter the amount of STBG or CMAQ requested. If you selected project changed, please use the space to add additional context to the selected checkbox. The narrative here may also include any supplemental information to provide context on the project funding if needed. This is a required field. And then you can disregard the prior project revision comparison section that is not applicable to this application. So that is all of the questions for the programming tab. And next I'm going to walk through the other tabs of this application. So for the map tab, this feature will not be used for the current application submittal. Please disregard. Project maps can be uploaded as attachments through the attachment tab. Next is the IDs and contacts. So if applicable, please input any existing RTP, FTIP, or federal project IDs here. RTP refers to the Regional Transportation Plan or Connect SoCal. FTIP refers to the Federal Transportation Improvement Program, FTIP, and for both the RTP and FTIP IDs, these lists are linked to the application guidebook and on the SCAG website if you need to reference those numbers. And the federal project ID, this number is assigned by Caltrans local assistance during the obligation process. Next is the attachments section. So here's where you can upload supporting documentation to the project application as indicated through the application. So please name the files to indicate the attachment type. And you'll just click select files, and then you can add these files to your application. Revision history, you can disregard this section. This is not relevant to the application submittal, so you can disregard. And then finally, the project questions. So this is an opportunity for you to share more information about your project. So the first section of the project questions is the regional priorities. This will be evaluated based on the project's program category selected in the project type field of the programming tab. So please also reference Appendix B, project examples by category of the program guidelines for additional information on which program categories belong to Tier 1 and Tier 2 of regional priorities. So for this first question, if the project has been identified as part of a Tier 1 regional priority, please indicate NA or not applicable in the narrative box. If the project has been identified as part of a Tier 2 regional priority program category, please indicate and describe if there is an existing systems approach in place to manage these needs. This is a short answer question. For the next set of questions, please indicate the applicable federal performance management areas from the drop-down menu. So you can select as many as are applicable. Next, you will indicate the project level of impact to the corresponding federal performance management areas. So the options are high, medium, low, or NA are not applicable. So you will answer this question first for each of the set of questions, and then there are subsequent questions that may be applicable. So please make sure you read each section carefully to determine which of the subsequent questions are applicable to you. For each of these set of questions, there are resources and links along the way to help guide your answers to these questions. As referenced earlier in the presentation, these short answer questions are opportunities for you to provide evidence and data and additional information to support the answers that you select for each of these questions of high, medium, low, or not applicable impact. And again, you'll be able to reference links throughout this process. So once you've answered all of these questions, you will now be at the Community Economic Development Benefits section. So first, you will select the applicable drop-down option for the project location. And there is a link to the Build Grant Project Location Verification Mapping Tool linked into this application, as well as in the application guidebook to reference when answering this question, and you will select the applicable answer out of this drop-down list. Next, there's a short answer box to expand if indicated by your prior answer, if applicable to you. For question 3 on project benefits, there's a drop-down list where you can check all of the project benefits that may apply. And then question 4, this is an opportunity for you to describe how the project supports the benefits identified. And you can also reference Appendix D, Community Economic Development Benefits of the program guidelines for more information. Next is the air quality improvement and cost effectiveness for CMAQ eligible projects only question. The first question is just going to check to make sure that you filled out that section of the programming tab that went through the air quality. So this is just reminders and links to all of the information referenced above and throughout this presentation about how to calculate this. And this first question is just going to be yes or no to verify if you have filled out this question, if it's applicable to your project. If electing to provide co-benefits for CO2, you can provide those in MT per day and in kg per day in the fields below for questions 2 and 3. And these fields are optional if applicable. Question 4 is for you to calculate cost effectiveness of the proposed project using the FHWA calculation referenced here. More information can be found at the link on the application, as well as in the guidebook, as well as in this presentation. You can also use this space for however you would like to show your answer for cost effectiveness. So you could use the short answer section to show your work, add a little explanation if that's helpful, or you can simply put the cost effectiveness calculation final number in this box. So however you would like to use this box is for you to explain your answer. And then next is the County Transportation Commission's supplemental questions. So this will vary depending on your county because some counties have questions and some it's not applicable. So for each county, by the time this application goes live, there will be links here to each of the applicable questions if applicable for each of the CTCs for supplemental questions. So this question is just asking you to check to see if you have supplemental questions, if you've completed them in the way requested by the CTC. So it's just asking you to confirm. Their links will show you what your CTC is requesting, and more information can be found in the county-specific workshops. If any applicable supplemental questions need to be attached to this application, you can upload them in this attachment tab. Next is the attachment section of the project questions. So this is just to check to make sure that you have the attachments that you need and to check any of the applicable attachment types that have been included Please note that the list displayed is only inclusive of attachment types and will not summarize the list of actual attachments that you've submitted to this application. So this is a general list. Other attachments, in addition to this list of attachment types shown, may still be uploaded to the attachment tabs and should be clearly labeled. Finally, the last step is the certification and assurances. So please select yes to affirm the general statement shown. So once you have completed this, all of the application, you'll be ready to submit. If you need to save the application along the way, you start working on it and you need to come back to it in a different day or a different session, you can always click Save Changes here. And sometimes when you come back into the application, you won't be able to click in it right away. And so that when that happens, you'll need to click Edit to get back into the typing part of the application. If you go over here to see missing requirements in the top left corner, you can click on that and see any of the required fields that you have not yet submitted. You can see them here on this list. And then once you have completed all of the application and you're ready to submit, there'll be another button up here to submit your application, and that's where your application will be submitted. So that is all for the application. Just as a reminder, I know it's a lot of information, and once the application goes live and you'll be able to look into it, you can always reference back to our application guidebook, to this presentation, to reference back if you have any questions along the way while you're completing the application. So that concludes our demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and we'll add the presentation back up on the slides and we'll wrap up with our workshop today.
Avi, would you be able to reshare the slides?
Great, and we'll just go one. Perfect, awesome. So here are a few more ways to learn more and ask questions about the application process. As referenced earlier in the presentation, we will be holding office hours. For SCAG office hours, we have a sign-up link available on our program webpage. It's first come, first served, and it's an opportunity for project-specific support. There'll be 25-minute sessions available Mondays and Tuesdays in April, and depending on demand, we may add more availability. Additionally, some county transportation commissions may also be offering similar technical assistance, so please check their websites and for their information as well. We also have county-specific workshops and activities available through March. The county-specific workshops will provide a condensed version of today's presentation, as well as an overview of the county prioritization frameworks presented by the County Transportation Commission staff. So we have one more poll question, if we could get that poll question pulled up. So our final question is, where can I go if I have questions about the application? Awesome. Thank you all so much for participating in our poll. All of the above, all of these answers are correct. There's lots of resources available to you as you navigate the application process. So please utilize these resources if needed. We also included some links to references used during today's presentation. Most of these will also be incorporated into the program guidelines in the application guidebook. And we will be posting the slides from this presentation as well. So you can go ahead and click through the links through the slideshow as well. So here's some information about some upcoming trainings through the California Local Technical Assistance Program, or LTAP. So these centers enable agencies to increase their transportation expertise at the local level by providing them across access to trainings and technical resources prepared at the national level. Most will have a course fee and with a special discounted public agency rate, and the quarterly Caltrans local assistance days are free. So here's just a list of the upcoming training schedule. So now we're going to open it up to Q&A. So please type your questions into the chat or use the raise hand feature. Remember, we will not be responding to project-specific eligibility questions. These can be directed to SCAG staff, County Transportation Commission staff, or Caltrans local assistance staff in email or as a part of the office hours opportunities. So we will open it up to questions.
We have gotten a question in the chat about making a Word version or offline version available for download. So we'll definitely take that back internally and see if there's a resource that we can provide there.
Yeah, for the County Transportation Commission hosted program workshops, we do have contacts listed on our website, so you could reach out directly to the County Transportation Commission staff. Our RCTC has provided their registration link in the chat if you are an agency in Riverside County who would like to sign up for the March 24th workshop. Additionally, I can post the registration links for the Los Angeles and the Orange County workshops in the chat as well.
We also got a question from Eduardo about creating multiple records in the online system so that different people within the agency can access the same applications. So yes, each staff will have access to all of the applications from their same agency. This was also mentioned earlier, but another reminder, if you have private consultants that will be working on applications on behalf of an eligible applicant, please send us an email so that we can make sure that we're giving everybody the appropriate viewing and editing access.
We've gotten a couple of questions in the chat about limitations on the number of applications, the maximum or minimum request amounts. SCAG does not have any requirements regarding how many applications a single agency can submit. We also do not have a minimum or maximum request amount. However, you should coordinate with your County Transportation Commission, as their frameworks may have some information that you may just want to be aware of and how they will prioritize projects. Regarding making changes to an application after submission, so the application is only available to local agencies until May 16th at 5 p.m. After that point, you will not be able to make any edits. So we recommend that you submit the final version of your application at that time. If you submit early and there's still time in the application period, there is a possibility that we could push your application back to you. But if it has passed that May 16th deadline, there's very limited resources that we have in being able to provide the application back to you. Yeah, so regarding the next call for projects, we mentioned that we are planning to do this every odd year, so every other year with about 2 federal fiscal years of funding. We do not currently have the estimated amounts for that, as these federal fiscal years are dependent on reauthorization. So the current infrastructure bill, the IIJA, is currently authorized through September 2026. So this call includes the first 2 federal fiscal years of funding that follow the IIJA authorization. So these funds and any future funds will be dependent on a reauthorization or new infrastructure bill that would need to be passed by Congress. As of now, we have no insight into what that is going to look like, but we will provide more information as we are made aware of it.
And just to piggyback on Heidi's comment there, if you look at what the region has historically received in apportionments, if we were to do a 2-year call like we're suggesting, it would be in the neighborhood of $1 billion, essentially 500 to 600 million a year in combined CMAQ, STBG. So if you add those together, that's where you get the billion to billion two, depending on exactly how much from each source. So while, as Heidi indicated, we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know what Congress is necessarily going to do or how successful a subsequent bill is, or whether we'll have continuing resolutions for the foreseeable future. That is something that you ought to keep in mind as you're looking forward. Thank you.
Regarding samples from previous years, this is actually only our second round of call for projects for these funds. Our initial round was a much smaller pot of funding, and our application looked significantly different than what it does in this round. So I don't think samples will be helpful to anyone for this round, as the questions have changed quite a lot, and the responses that we're looking for in this round have changed. But we do recommend that if you have questions on responding to any of these scoring criteria, that you set up an office hours appointment with SCAG staff, and we can do our best to help guide you.
I'll jump on the next one. I think someone asked about if they're consulting for a number of agencies simultaneously, can they have essentially submit multiple accounts on different clients? And that is, we actually foresaw this as being a need and do allow that. Oh, yeah, thanks. Heidi reminded me to also clarify that if you are doing that, we also need documentation that you are acting on behalf of that agency. We're not going to just let anybody apply for your agency. We actually want you to be working for them. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'll just add there that for some of those special cases, it may be easier on the back end with the setup to just shoot us an email with what the needs are, and then that documentation that we're requesting from the eligible agencies represented, and then we can have it set up on the back end.
So in terms of getting a confirmation upon submission to the application, I believe we can turn that feature on. We'll have to just double check with our software developer if that's the case. But yes, I believe that there is the functionality where you can get a receipt.
We have a question about uh, asking whether there are any drawbacks to reapplying if they were on the contingency list from the previous call, and to request a different amount. As was noted earlier, we're actually encouraging applicants to reapply if they were on the contingency list and haven't been programmed. I think there's an opportunity to potentially get yourself on the recommended or highly recommended list this round. As Heidi indicated, the last call was substantially lower dollar value than what this call includes. And, you know, if I were you, I would take advantage of that opportunity.
And I'll just add to, we also recognize that um, there might have been cost increases on projects, very likely cost increases on projects, especially on a need that was not previously funded. So we'll definitely encourage updating cost estimates to, again, year of expenditure and making sure that, yeah, they're up to date. Thanks.
All right. We're going to give it just 2 more minutes for anybody to submit any lingering questions. Otherwise, that pretty much concludes our workshop today. As I mentioned at the start of the workshop, that we will be posting the workshop slides as well as the recording from today on our website for your reference. And I don't see any additional questions. Again, if you have any project-specific questions or if any questions come up along the way, we are offering office hours throughout the entire month of April, and there is a registration link available on our website for you to sign up for those. If you're applying for the PAED phase, you do not have to have an approved NEPA document prior to the authorization.
In fact, you could be seeking funding to do the NEPA phase. And that, especially if you're, if this is one of your first projects, and you're kind of like putting your toes in the water with federal funds, that might not be a bad idea to kind of incrementally go through, you know, getting your experience with federal dollars.
In this application, when you're filling out the programming tab, you can indicate what split of CMAQ and STBG funds you're interested in. Um, Again, you'll have to fill out all the applicable questions related to both fund sources. So confirming that you're eligible to receive both funding types. And then as always, you know, SCAG is the ultimate decider on awards. So depending on your project's eligibility, you know, there may be a possibility where, you know, we've identified it for a certain fund source, and in which case we would reach out to you to confirm that you would be okay with receiving one fund source or the other or a combination of the both.
Yeah, so we do have another question about prior phase funding, the BCIP program that was previously funded with CMAQ funds. If the phase of work has not been authorized yet, then any cost increases could still be considered through this call. It gets a little bit harder, more complicated with phases of work that are currently in progress. So we definitely would recommend looking forward to phases that have not yet been authorized to start.
We could also, you could also reach out to us during office hours, and if there's nuances that we need to discuss, we could do that in a more intimate setting.
All right, I think that wraps up our Q&A portion. So again, thank you all for attending. Please, check out our website. We also have our contact information on there as well in case you wanted to reach out to any of us directly. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you.